Hello, members. So, just a little bit of Fukushima on the fly, and a little bit of, books here. Here's the problem. I've been working on these books for like a long time. This is my other paperwork I was doing the other day that kind of got cut off to the wayside because the printer that I was using ran out of ink. But I ended up buying a new printer, but I haven't set up that one. So, anyway, still have to do that. But this here, all this stuff here, and that's just some of it. There's another one there. And, I got some stuff in my room. This is all non-profit stuff. Most of it there. I'd say probably a good 98%. And, 95%. And I know I got a few other, file folders and that type of thing that goes with it as well. My problem is I don't really have any place for this anymore. I used to store them on shelving. When I used to live in an apartment, I kind of had my boxes all on a shelf like that in a wall. Problem was the apartment had cockroaches, and usually when apartment gets cockroaches, it becomes a problem, and cockroaches like paper. So a good way to get good. What I learned is one, move away from the cockroaches. If you have too much stuff, kind of like I do, pack them up in a box, pack everything up in a box, and then I moved, right? And from my move, a lot of my boxes, they just kind of sat for a long time full, and I couldn't get to them. So when I was unpacking, a couple of times, a cockroach would get out and I'd step on it, right? I'd squish it. And then, thank God when I moved, they came with me, but I got rid of them. And one way was to catch them when you were unpacking them. I think it was only one or two that I found. And then over a period of 6 months, I started unpacking other boxes that had sat in my foyer forever and ever. And sure enough, they died in the box. Bed bugs are a little harder to get rid of, and they like paper too, and they like wood, obviously. I found when I was living in my little shanty shack, I ended up getting bed bugs in there. Never had bed bugs. I always thought that bed bug, good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. I always thought it was a fairy tale until I actually had them. One day, my dad was breaking out in hives, and I said, "Holy crap, what are you doing? You're breaking out in hives. Stop sitting in the sun so much." We couldn't figure it out. We took him to the doctor. Doctor couldn't figure it out. And then one night I went into his room. I turned on the light, and there he was, laying on the bed with all these little bugs crawling on him. Oh my God. It was the worst thing in life I'd ever seen. So, of course, I rushed him out of bed, had a panic attack, started grabbing all the sheets, couldn't figure out what the fuck was going on. And then, long story short, I ended up, I actually took the bed frame because it was a wood bed frame. It was quite nice, really. And I sanded it down, stripped it of the shellac and whatever, sanded it down, and re-shellacked it, stained it, right? But it didn't work. I found that I think what happened was when they get right into the wood, like right into the wood, into the inside of the wood, not the outside, because bed bugs like to burrow into wood, right? That's why they like wood. And even if you shellac them over, they're gonna find a way to get out. So long story short, I did that also to like a couple of bookshelves that were wood, not the Presto. Presto I'd throw out. Wouldn't even waste my time. And it took me almost it took me a year and a half to get rid of them, almost 2 years, because there was outbreaks of them. So what I did is obviously mad clean. I couldn't afford to throw out all the mattresses right away, so I started bleaching them with water along the seams, wiping them down. Pulled everything out from the baseboards. I took a toothbrush and I bleached along the baseboard with the toothbrush because bleach kills things. And then lightly wipe it with a rag. And I had one set of books that got bed bugs in them. I tried putting them in the oven because I have a thing for books. I don't like to throw them out. So anyway, I actually tried to put them in the oven and cook the little bastards, right? But I found that what happened was it kind of warped my pages. So that didn't really work. I think in the end I just bagged them up and let them sit. But bed bugs can live over for a year without feeding. So I probably took a rag You rag again with a little bit light bleach water for that, and you'd go through the seam of the book. For example, I'll show you because they like to live in the seams. Here, we'll just use this book here. All these books, and I have to walk across the room to get a book. But, they like to live in the seams. This is just some general information. So when you go shopping for books in bookstores, if you can remember, let's see if we can zoom in on that. See, that's not a bed bug, but if there was bed bugs in the house, it could quite possibly be a bed bug. But it's not. That's just grit. But they like to live in the seams, so this is where you have to watch because they're so small initially when they're hatching out of their eggs. You can't see them. So you just go through the book, and if it looks like it's starting to get little black dots on it, then it's suspicious. Same thing with your beds. Bed bugs come in the house, whether it's through people's clothing, because they tend to cling on to clothing. And so that's how they get transported around. Also, too, like when people go into hotels and they, unpack their suitcase or whatever it is, briefcase or whatever on the bed, and they leave it there, and then the little bed bug comes out and you crawl on, and that's how from the hotel you get on the plane and you bring it home. Okay, so it really has nothing to do with cleanliness other than, if you never cleaned your house. But if you clean your house and you try and clean your house and you do what normal people do in a day, then and you come home with bed and you find one day you have bed bugs, chances are it had nothing to do with the way you cleaned your house other than you just didn't see them because they're so small. And when you do finally realize that you have them, you've had them for a while because they are so small and it takes a while for them to multiply. So if you find that you get them, like I found out one time, it's going to take a little while to get rid of them. Now, I've never used a spray. I use good old elbow, I'm tired this morning, elbow grease, I use a lot of elbow grease, bleach, water, rags, toothbrush, and being consistent. And I found that over the summer, they tend to breed a little faster than in the winter. They tend to go dormant in the winter. Because when I thought I had them and I worked hard to get rid of them, and I even ended up throwing out like a couple, I think I threw out I ended up having to throw out 2 bed frames, 1 bookshelf, like a bookshelf, like a desk type thing. And I know it was 1 mattress for sure. I don't know if it was 2. I can't remember. It's been so long. But because I just, no matter how much I washed it and bleached it and, did whatever, they just kept seeming to come back. So for some reason I just said, to heck with it, I'm done with this, and so I threw them out. So if you get bed bugs, I would recommend thinking about throwing out something. Don't take the chance if it's like if it's a wood bed frame, like a children's bunk wood bed frame. It's not worth the grievance, to try and salvage it, if it's infested with bed bugs. So I would highly recommend just chucking it. Don't try and sand it down and, stain it and re-shellac it and do all that, because you're just going to be wasting your time. Chances are you'll have to throw it out anyway. Mattresses, you can, if you're consistent on wiping down the seams, and with even if you have to take a toothbrush with a little bit of bleach. Now, mind you, it puts a little wear and tear on the fabric, but, as a poor person, as a matter of fact, I had just bought my bed. It was like a nice, $800 bed. Because I was sleeping on the floor on a mattress that, who knows how long I slept on that one. So I kind of went into debt and bought myself a bed. This was in my house where my playground was bigger than my living space. But, needless to say, I had to move out of there due to politics. So, I moved out into an apartment, and then I moved into a shanty shack. And the next thing you know, here's my mattress that isn't even a year old, all of a sudden getting bed bugs. So, it wasn't like I could afford to throw it out, especially when I was still paying for the thing. So toothbrush, bleach, rag, water, elbow grease, consistency, do that once a month in the initial festation, and then it gets tiring and obnoxious after a while in terms of having to do the work, but then you can kind of narrow it down. Wintertime, like I said, I find that they tend to go dormant. You think you got rid of them, right? Oh God, there's nothing there. I haven't seen anything for a while, so you go to sleep and you don't think about it for a few months, and then come summertime, spring, later spring going into the summer, you think, oh well, maybe I should check the mattress, and then you find out, oops, there was another outbreak. So that's what happened to me, because I left that lull. I got comfortable with the fact that I thought I had gotten rid of them, and I didn't. And of course, you go from room to room to every room, every bedroom, and you make, not every room is going to get an infestation, but if you don't get a handle on it like ASAP, they will travel around the house. And also too, because they do like paper. You would think with all this knowledge, I wouldn't want all this paper and books around me and wood, but, it's not as bad as you think it is. So, something like this, if, say, I had bed bugs in my house, which is quite, could be very possible, I could get them any day because I live in a community that's full of them. So, all kinds of people walk through my house, and I go out into the public. My children go out into the public, They've even had bed bugs in the library in the books, so you got to be careful. So, if you have them in the house, in your bedrooms, this is a time when something like this, you would want to, maybe pull out a few books and take a look, because if you're going to get them, you're going to want to nip them in the bud real fast and catch the one that escaped, because it only takes one to reproduce, kind of like a cockroach. So when you go grocery shopping and you're bringing home your bags of rice and your flours and your sugars, and, oftentimes that's how a cockroach will get into your house. I remember one time, years and years and years and years ago, went grocery shopping, came home, had my big bag of this, big bag of that, was putting stuff away. All of a sudden, I seen this little thing scurry across the floor. Oh, I tell you, I stepped on it. That was it. And I never got cockroaches, thank God, because I killed it before it even had a chance to lay an egg. So, that's what we have to educate people on, okay? Because to rely on spraying to get rid of bed bugs, say in apartment buildings and stuff, is kind of impractical, not good for the kids, not good for the adults. It's just not really very good. So how we're going to get people to start pulling out the bucket with some bleach and water and some toothbrushes and some elbow grease, I don't know. But for general information, bed bugs you can get rid of without spraying. You put the barrier up with the bleach along the baseboard, because they'll go into the baseboard and they'll live there for a year and a half. Like I said, they can go a year and a half without feeding. So they can go dormant and wait for you to come in, and then as soon as they realize you're there, they're coming out. So if you put the barrier there with the bleach, it's on along the baseboard, it doesn't have to be straight bleach, but if you feel that you want to put straight bleach there, you can do that for a little while and then take a rag and just kind of wipe it, right? But they won't, kill them. I got rid of them. And if you feel that the furniture is too infested, because they're right into the actual wood itself, and they will feed on Presto wood, even though there's glue in it, they will feed on it. So it's not worth keeping it. Just chuck it out. Salvage what you can and what you can't salvage. Don't feel like you're missing out on anything, because you're probably saving yourself hours and hours of work trying to salvage it. So, and make sure when you throw it out, to either, throw it out like within reason, in terms of put a note on it and say, oh, well, it's got bed bugs, don't take it home. Because people put stuff outside on the road, other people come along, they think, this looks good, and then what happens? They take it home to their house without even realizing what they're bringing home. So, dispose of it properly, especially if it's bed bugs, because bed bugs will live in the wood, and most people don't know that the little black dots on the wood, inconsistent with like all around each other in clumps, they don't realize that that it probably has bed bug. Anyway, this is my paperwork. My time is running out. I'm at 14 minutes. It's going to take 5 hours to upload this. And I got my books ready. So when I clear off some stuff here, this has got to go downstairs. This is the Fukushima on the fly. We got some macaronis here and some olive oils. And look at that. Pretty nice, eh? That's all macaroni. Filled them up to the brim. Taped them so, we don't get bugs. Not this one. But you can see there's tape on them. I don't know if you can see that, but I taped up all the seams. That was a YouTube video I seen. I thought that was kind of cool. Keeps bugs out, being that we're speaking about bugs. My landlord gave me some new kind of oil here. I thought this was kind of cool. So I'm going to try this one. Nice. I like the bottle. It's a grapeseed oil. So, yeah, I'm working on a few other videos, but I gotta work on my house. I got a lot of stuff to put away. I don't know where I'm gonna put my non-profit books. I'm getting kind of tired of this. I really am. But one day at a time. Peace out.